Hello my guys, I hope you are all having a wonderful festive period. Today I am bringing you my final book haul of 2023 and I believe we have 31 books to talk about. So I'm going to be real honest, I have a lack of organisation in my life right now. I have not been keeping on track of my spreadsheet, especially like the hauled page in the last quarter of the year. So I'm not even entirely sure that these are all of the books that I need to haul for you guys, but I've cross-referenced this with my spreadsheet and I actually have more books here from my haul pile than are actually in my spreadsheet. So I feel like we're okay and this is pretty accurate. I also have come to the realization, or not necessarily realization, I am now accepting that I have too many books. And I do have some plans in place to rectify that in 2024, but with that does also come a lack of organisation. We're also doing some renovations in the house right now, which has also not caused, but we have other things going on in the house because everything has decided, like minor things have all decided to break at the same time. So if you do hear a rattle in the background of this video, my radiator is rattling and we have bled it and it hasn't fixed it. So I need to troubleshoot that at some point in the next few days. I don't think it's too audible, especially when I'm talking, but if it is, I'm sorry. I'm struggle bussing. I'm really struggle bussing right now. But we're going to talk about some exciting things, which are the books that I've hauled since I think the end of August was the last time I did a haul. And now, of course, somebody's at the door. Why wouldn't they be? As I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted by the delivery of my Illumicrates, I'm pretty sure that my last book haul was at the end of August. So this video is going to contain everything that I've acquired in September, October, November, and the first half of December. I'm not going to be doing any kind of wish list unboxing this year because, as I just said, I have too many books and I've just found my water bottle. I filled my water bottle up last night and then lost it. It's on Hamilton's cat tree. So at least that mystery's solved. I'm also not anticipating just generally receiving many books for Christmas. So this is pretty much me for the end of the year. I am holding out for Waterstones to put on a double point sale on Boxing Day because I need to get the next few Wheel of Time books for next year and also potentially one other sequel and also get my pre-orders in line for 2024. But as usual, this book haul is going to be split into sections of where I have acquired the books from. Today we have books that were gifted to me, books I've received from publishers, books I bought secondhand, and then the largest stack is books that I've bought new, followed by special editions that I have bought from subscription box companies. So as usual, I'm not going to be including my regular monthly subscription box books in this video because they are all in my unboxing videos, but anything outside of a monthly subscription I purchased from a subscription box company like Fairyloot or Illumicrate will be in this haul. And we will kick off with the one book that I have received from a publisher in the last couple of months. I'm pretty sure that this one came in last month, but it is Red Sight by Meredith Mooring. This one is released in February 2024 and it was sent to me by Solaris, so thank you very much to Solaris for that. Solaris is a publishing house that published another book that's going to be in this haul that I received an art from them and really loved, and this was sold to me as, I think, is it not Red Rising, it was sold as Gideon the Ninth meets June, I think. Now I haven't read June, but I loved Gideon the Ninth. I read that recently and I really enjoyed it. I'm really hoping to get to the sequel sometime soon. But this one is a sci-fi featuring space pirates and I believe it also has a sapphic relationship. It has one of those synopses that, because I have no context, I'm really bad at retaining fantasy and sci-fi synopses if I have no context aside from just the synopsis. So that is pretty much all I can tell you about this, but I am hoping to get to this one in January, and after loving Gideon the Ninth, I am very excited to do so. Next we'll go with the books that were gifted, and this one is one that I actually scooped from a friend's on haul, and that is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. So I have read Horror Store and My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix and really enjoyed both of them. I haven't read, what's the one that I own? The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires is the one that I own and haven't read yet. But Grady Hendrix is one of those authors where I actually will only own one book unread by them before I buy more. But Beth said that she was on haul in this, so I couldn't resist. It's also The Forbidden Planet signed. one. So it has this really cool signed page with a little doodle of a ghost in it. All I know about this one is that it is about a woman whose parents have died and she has to kind of team up with her estranged brother to ready her parents' house for sale. I think it has doll horror in it, and that is all I know. I have a couple of romances that were gifted to me by Amberly, who is one of my patrons, but also somebody who came on my Rome Trovatrip in September. If you are interested in potential future Trovatrips as well, the link to my Greece trip for next October is in the description box, and we do still have some early bird spots available. If you want to come on a Greek island reading retreat, then please go ahead and check that out. But if not, the books that Amberly gifted to me, thank you very much Amberly, are Enchanted to Meet You by Meg Cabot. Now this is one that I just kept eyeing up when we were looking in bookstores in Rome, and I just don't know if Meg Cabot still has it, you know. Like, Meg Cabot was pretty much my favorite author when I was a teenager, but I have read nothing since becoming an adult, so I don't know whether Meg Cabot's writing has like grown with the times. I don't even know if I reread Meg Cabot, her books would stand up to the test of time. So I wasn't quite ready to take the plunge on this one, so Amberly very kindly took the plunge for me. This one is like a witchy rom-com, you know, in the same vein as like the XX and all of the other books of that variety that have been published in the last like couple of years. And this one is about a witch who has been banished from the Council of Witches. I think it's because of some sort of spell that went wrong, and some handsome guy like turns up on her doorstep and tells her that she is actually the chosen one and she has to like get back into the world of magic. The next one that Amberly gifted to me is her favorite romance series of all time, and I actually don't know too much about the plot of this, but I have heard good things when I've seen it mentioned in passing, and that is Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. So this, I feel, is one of those super addictive, low-key problematic new adult romances that you just eat up because of the drama, and I'm here for that. You guys know I love that messiness. All I know about this one is that it is following two people who are struggling with addiction, and they have been fake dating for years when it comes to their family. So when they go home to see their families, they pretend that they're in a relationship to divert their family's attention away from the problems that the main characters are dealing with. Obviously, this is probably going to lead to a super toxic relationship, but I feel like the two main characters are going to work through their problems, and in the process of that, they're probably gonna start dating for real. For the books that I bought secondhand, I found the holy grail of charity shop books, guys. Like, I am always lucky when it comes to thrifting books, but this is something else. Because when I was near Brighton at the end of November, beginning of December, I went to this big charity warehouse and I found an Ark of the Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is in such good condition considering that it is from 2007, and I'm actually a little bit worried that I cannot keep this in the same pristine condition that it has existed in for the last 16 years. Like, it is legitimately a proof from 2007 of one of the biggest fantasy releases of all time. I still think about this and I'm shook regularly. If you guys don't know what The Name of the Wind is, I think it's supposed to be a trilogy. Patrick Rothfuss has still not released the final book, although I do believe there is a novella that has just been released, a prequel one that goes along with like the other novella that exists, I think. But there are 2 books released so far, and this is the story of Kvothe. I believe that the way that this story is told is that Kvothe goes into like a bar or a tavern and he starts to tell his life story. I think that he tells his life story across 3 days, and each book in the trilogy represents 1 day of him telling his life story. I don't know what his life story contains, but I think there's a magic school. This is one of the ones that I've been putting off for a number of years. I fully believe that I'm going to love this series, but I don't want the disappointment of getting to the end of the 2nd book and not having book 3 and not having any idea how long we're gonna wait for book 3. And also, I don't like to take on too many big epic high fantasy series at once. And as you know, like in recent years, I've done the majority of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, I've done The Realm of the Eldlings, and currently doing Wheel of Time and also the First Law universe. So this one has just not hit my lineup yet, mainly because the last book isn't released. So if I'm gonna put any off, I feel like it should be this one, but I have no doubt that I'm gonna adore this one. One that I also found at that charity warehouse was a thriller that I've been keeping an eye out for, which is The Dry by Jane Harper. This was recommended to me by Leanne from Literary literary diversions, and I don't typically pay full price for things like thrillers, so I wanted to see if I could scoop this up secondhand, and I managed to. I do want to say as well that both of these were like £1 or £1.50 each. Like, they were super cheap, which still blows my mind when it comes to this one. But as this was recommended to me by Leanne, I picked it up solely on that recommendation, and I only know the bare bones of this, which is that it is set in Australia. It is featuring a guy who I think is a detective, but he doesn't do like homicide or missing persons or anything like super big like that. But he goes back to his hometown for the funeral of his best friend, and he ends up drawn into the investigation of finding out what happened to his best friend. I believe this is a series. I don't know whether the series goes on with like different cases or whether it is like just continuing to follow the same case. I am not normally somebody who reads mystery thrillers or crime in this vein, following an investigator that is trying to get to the bottom of a murder. It's the same kind of format as like a lot of British TV that I grew up watching in my house, because it was literally all my mum watched, and because of that, like, I just don't like it. Like, I've never liked it. And I normally don't touch crime at all. So because Leanne's recommended this to me, I'm assuming it's a little bit different than your typical crime format, and I'm excited to find out. I also went to the Lake District at the end of October, and I stumbled across this bookstore, and inside it was very much like a, not even W.H. Smith situation, but almost like it had a lot of like craft books and history books and a tiny like one shelf fantasy section along with some comics. But outside it had all of these library trolleys that were crammed with US editions of fantasy books for £2 each. And I still don't understand why, because that's the kind of stuff that I would pay full price for inside, but they had none of that inside. So I managed to scoop up a couple of things. A lot of stuff I would have got if it was the first book in a series, but there was a lot of like books 2 and 3 in series that I'd heard good things about. So I managed to scoop up something that was actually my Patreon pick for October. It is available on Scribd, but I thought while I could find a physical copy, because I do prefer to read physically, which is a big problem for me, I managed to get a copy of Splintered by A.G. Howard. So this one is inspired by Alice in Wonderland. Like, Alice in Wonderland exists within this world. The grandmother or great grandmother of our main character actually inspired Lewis Carroll to write Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. However, our main character, who is called Alyssa, her family has been plagued by madness, and every woman in her family eventually starts rambling about this like mysterious Wonderland. So Alyssa very much assumes that this is also going to be her fate, and I'm assuming that instead she realizes that Wonderland is a real place. I have yet to get to this one at the time of filming this. At the time of you seeing this, I think I will have already read it, because it is actually next up on my list of things to pick up. This one is like a 2013 YA, so I'm just really hoping it's not too cringe and that I can like get behind the fun nostalgia vibes of it. And then the other one that I picked up from that bookshop in the Lake District is one that I could not tell you anything about. Like, straight up, I'm not even going to try and give you a synopsis of this book, but I know that I've seen good reviews of it, and it was book 1. It was £2. Fantasy paperbacks, fantasy hardbacks are hella expensive, but even fantasy paperbacks are expensive these days. So if I see something that I want to read and it's £2, I'm going to pick it up, and that is why I have too many books. Like, I know I've bought a lot of new books here, but most of these are like sequels, things I'm anticipating. My issue is I can't walk away from a bargain. So in that vein, I picked up Engines of Empire by R.S. Ford, which is the first book in the Age of the Uprising series. Let me know down in the comments if you've read this and if you've enjoyed it. I don't know what it's about. I'm probably not going to get to it for a number of years, but I have it now, and I have to have books as well. Like, if there's a book that I really want to read and I don't own it and there's not a good reason for me to buy it, then I'm just never going to read it, because I always have to prioritize my backlist. We have some work to do on my reading habits in 2024, and I'm hoping that we can actually be successful in that. It's really easy to go into a year with lots of lofty goals and give up on them real quick. So we'll see how I go. Don't hold me accountable, because I just generally hate that. I crumble under responsibility, but I have good feelings about next year. So as for the books that I bought new, I do have one that I regret. I got swept away in not even the hype with this one, but I picked up the revised edition of The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, and before I bought this, I was kind of against it. I still am kind of against it, because what Samantha Shannon has done is she has essentially gone back through the Bone Season series and edited the book herself. So she's written the books better, essentially, because now that she's grown as an author, like her craft is better, her writing's better, and she wants her work to reflect that. I personally, if it was me, would not do this because I feel like there are things to learn from your past. Like the things that you make at the time that you make them are a product of you at the time that you made them. And I don't necessarily feel like you should be able to just go ahead, or you should go ahead and redo those. Also, this series isn't finished, Samantha. Finish the series, don't rewrite it. That being said, I went to a Waterstones event for this book because it was in York. It was at Waterstones in York, which is my closest city, and I feel like if there's book events for authors that I like, because the Bone Season is one of my favorite series, then I should be attending them. And it was also chaired by Sarah El-Arifi, who is the author of one of my favorite series of the last like couple of years. So I went to the event and I heard Samantha Shannon talk about the reasons why she has chosen to rewrite this series, and I was just swept away by it. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, yeah, I agree with you. Like, this is cool what you've done here. So I also didn't take any books to sign with me because I think all of my hardbacks of the Bone Season are signed, and I actually think I'm going to unhaul Priory of the Orange Tree because I don't really like that one very much. So I bought this to have Samantha sign and personalize it. So now I can't even unhaul it. And now that I've had some time to sit with it, I go back to my original thoughts on this. But if you have not read the Bone Season, go ahead and pick up the revised edition. I just don't necessarily feel like it needs to exist. These covers are also so much nicer than the others, so I kind of want them because of how nice these covers are, but I also don't want them because I have the original hardbacks and I'm not going to unhaul those. It's just a whole mess, guys. It's just a whole mess. But this series is really cool. It's an adult fantasy, and it's also like a sci-fi and a dystopian though, if I'm being honest, but it is set in a world where it is illegal to be a clairvoyant. And our main character, Paige, just happens to be one. And not only that, she is an incredibly strong one as well. The way that society, or London specifically, has adapted to clairvoyancy being illegal is that there are pockets of underground crime gangs, and Paige is a high up member in one of these gangs. And one day she is caught using her clairvoyant ability and she is captured, and she thinks this means execution, but instead she is actually taken to a place that throws open the entire world. Now, I feel like it's spoilers to say anything else, but it does get quite like supernatural or paranormally like from that point. And it has the scope of like an epic fantasy plot, while it does lean more, I guess, into the paranormal, or it definitely is a dystopian society, but also like a little bit sci-fi as well. It's a whole mash of genres. I love this series. I think it's so well done. The attention to detail, the atmosphere, the world building, amazing. And that's without reading the rewritten edition. So she still had it when she was like 20, you know. This is unnecessary, but I have it now and it can't be unhauled because it's personalized. One of my favorite books of the year in terms of I keep coming back to it, but I actually only gave it 4 stars. It wasn't a 5-star read. This is the one that I received an ARC of from Solaris, and then after I read the ARC, I wanted a full copy for myself, and it is the Pomegranate Gate by Ariel Kaplan. So this one is technically a high fantasy, but it also strays into historical fantasy because the setting of this book is heavily inspired by like medieval Spain, and it is set at a time when the Christians have said that all of the Jewish people need to leave the city, or else they will they be executed? They won't be welcome there anymore, essentially. So all of the Jewish people, including our 2 main characters, leave the city looking for a safe place. One of our main characters, I think she can speak but she can't shout, and she can walk but she can't run, and she starts to fall behind this caravan that is leaving the city, and some guy kind of like spirits her away. Our other main character sees that and he follows them. Now what happens is the female main character gets taken through this portal into a different world, and the male main character ends up on a wild goose chase with her grandmother trying to find her and bring her back to this dimension. So this reminded me a lot of City of Brass, with the kind of pace and tone of the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. It also had a little bit of Akatar in it as well, and I don't want you to go into this thinking that it is a fantasy romance based on that. It does have some romance in here though, but just the situation that our female main character ends up in with these 2 characters, one of which is this lord that lives in like this crumbling mansion alone, gave me very strong like first book Akatar vibes. We also have like the djinn in here, and some of the setting, especially of this other dimension, reminded me a lot of the City of Brass. And then like the pacing, the atmosphere, the historical historical fantasy of it all reminded me a lot of the Winter Night trilogy. In hindsight, I could probably give this 5 stars just with how poignant I feel like this book has been to my reading year, because I keep thinking about it. I really loved it and I'm really excited to get into the sequel. One of my pre-orders for the year was XOXO Cody by Cody Rigsby. This is a non-fiction by one of my favorite Peloton instructors. Yes, I am a proud member of the Peloton cult. I've actually finally ordered an actual Peloton bike and I'm so excited for it to arrive in January. None of these books that I'm reading by Peloton instructors would I recommend based on them being a good book. I just want that to be clear, and I knew that going into them. It's just because I love the instructors and their personality so much. I am aware of the way that Peloton, like their marketing, is to get you attached to the instructors essentially and keep you hooked through that, and it works really, really well. Like, you cannot fault their marketing. And I love Cody Rigsby. Like, he is the reason why I joined Peloton to start off with. I would recommend, if you've been thinking about it, to just look up like compilations of Cody Rigsby on YouTube to get the kind of vibe that I'm talking about. But this is a little bit autobiographical and it has like little anecdotes from his life in. I thought it was really funny. I wouldn't recommend that you pick this up unless you're a fan of Cody Rigsby, but if you are, would recommend listening to the audiobooks. It was a really good time. Another kind of anticipated sequel, I kept forgetting that this was being released, but that is Saga Volume 11 by Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan. Saga is my favorite comic series of all time. It's like a Romeo and Juliet set in space. We are following this couple and their child, and they're not supposed to be together because one of them is from a planet that is at war with the moon and the other characters from the moon. So when they find out that these two have run off together and had a baby, they start being hunted down by the people from their planet or the government from their planet because they don't want anybody to know that like these two species can live in harmony. And this story is narrated through the eyes of the child. So after Volume 9, they went on hiatus for a few years, and I just don't feel like they can bring back like what they had. Like, I just don't feel like Saga can ever be the same again. And so while this is anticipated because Saga is my favorite series, the second story arc we're going into, I just don't know if it can be the same, you know? So we'll see. I do plan on reading this pretty soon, actually. I normally read some comics on Boxing Day, and I potentially have Saga lined up for that. The next one is a sequel to a book that I had on my shelves for a very long time and finally read, and that is The Exiled Queen by Cindy Williams Chimer. This one is the second book in a YA fantasy series. It has like spin-off series as well. It's high fantasy, it's multi-perspective, it has all of that good classic fantasy stuff like royalty, and one of our main characters is the princess. You have wizards who essentially went on a mad power trip 1,000 years ago, and because of that their magic is strictly regulated, but they now want to break free from that. And you have the clans people who are responsible for restricting the magic, and this is kind of the system that's been in place for 1,000 years to stop the wizards from becoming too powerful. However, the queen is now getting a little bit too close to her wizard advisor, so people are now starting to believe that there is something going on there that can disturb the peace of the kingdom. Oh, okay, so this one is a complete cover buy. I've heard literally nobody talk about this, but I saw it in Waterstones and the cover reminded me of God's Grave by J. Kristoff. And there's some books that I see and I feel like I just have a feeling that if I don't pick them up, I'm going to regret not being able to get the hardback edition. When I was in Waterstones, it was a very expensive hardback, and so I kind of just left it. And then I got an email that Broken Binding were doing an edition that was pretty much the same price as the standard, and that is Sons of Darkness by Gaurav Mohanty. So I know nothing about this. It has all the good stuff. There's royalty, assassins, priests, a prophecy, and it's inspired by like Indian mythology. That's all I know, but this cover is gorgeous. And this one's also signed and numbered. It's numbered 908 out of 2000, and I regret nothing. I would like to read it to see whether my purchase was justified. Sometimes my intuition comes through. It came through with Red Rising, it came through with the Greenbone Saga, and my intuition was telling me that I needed this book. Another sequel is Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which I already said I read Gideon recently and I loved it. So this is the second book in a sci-fi series that is following Sapphic necromancers in space. We are following Gideon, who was kind of abandoned as a baby on the planet asteroid that the ninth house resides on, and in this solar system, galaxy, whatever it may be, there are 9 planets which have the 9 necromantic houses on them, and all of them are summoned by the emperor to the first house to choose the next. I cannot remember what they are called. I don't think they're called paladins, but they're like legendary warriors that are very close to the emperor. And I think they may also be immortal. So they're all called to the first house to take part in this competition, essentially, to become the next ones of these like immortal warriors. And to do that, they need somebody to go with them as the, why can't I remember, is it Cavalier? Is that what it is? Harrow, who is the daughter of the 9th house, asked Gideon to go with her, but Gideon hates 9th house. Gideon is just trying to escape at every opportunity. So Harrow offers Gideon her freedom in exchange for accompanying her on this quest. So everyone gets to first house, all of the representatives from all of the different necromantic houses, and they're essentially given a cryptic clue and left to their own devices in this like crumbling castle. And it is a competition, but in a way where they just kind of have to figure out what's going on. It's not like a series of trials or anything. And it gets a little bit like murder mystery in there as well. I really would recommend listening to the audiobook and reading along at the same time for this series, but I'm so excited to get into Harrow and also potentially Nona, because this is a series that's very complex with a lot of details, and I think it's better to read them closer together as opposed to like leaving time in between each installment. I also picked up the Waterstones edition of The Throne of the Fallen by Kerri Maniscalco. This was after I recently read Kingdom of the Cursed. It's been 3 years since I read Kingdom of the Wicked, so I didn't want to get this until I'd continued on with the series to be sure that I still enjoyed it, and I did still enjoy Kingdom of the Cursed. But Kingdom of the Wicked is following a girl whose twin sister is murdered, and as she starts to investigate the murder of her sister, she figures out that her sister was involved in dark magic, and to try and get to the bottom of what was going on, she accidentally summons a Prince of Hell, who is Wrath, who for his own reasons assists her in her investigation. I actually don't know anything about the plot of Throne of the Fallen because this is a spin-off. I don't even know if you can read it without reading the original trilogy, but I know that I don't intend to, so that won't be an issue for me. And all I know about this one is that it follows Prince Envy, who is of course one of the princes of hell. I did also pre-order the paperback of The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. This is the final book in the second era of Mistborn, and I am so happy about that. I am not a fan of second era Mistborn, which is why my progress with the Cosmere has slowed down so much. But I actually can't even read this yet because I still need to read book 3, and then I need to reread all of Stormlight that's been published today and then get back into this book. And I'm not mad that I have to reread the entirety of Stormlight before I get into this, because the longer I can put off the books in this series, the better. So I love every series and every book in the Cosmere aside from second era Mistborn, and that is because it is a Western. It's just not a vibe that I enjoy. I feel like Westerns are very masculine, and I feel like this reads very masculine. I don't love the female characters in here, although they do have some character growth that I enjoy like throughout time as the series goes on. I do plan on trying to get to the 3rd book either this month if I can, or very early 2024, but we'll see. I didn't even realize I'd pre-ordered the paperback. Actually, it just turned up one day, but I have it now at least, and I know I'll get to it, and I will end up keeping it because it's an integral part of the Cosmere, even though hopefully I will never have to reread that series. Another anticipated sequel for me was Laur Olympus Volume 5 by Rachel Smith. If you are unfamiliar with Laur Olympus, it is a webcomic that has been bound up into these beautiful physical editions, and it is a retelling of primarily Hades and Persephone, but also the other gods of Olympus, but it is modernized, so they live in cities, they have technology, and because of the modernization, it's also really funny and has been made quite relatable. It doesn't shy away from some of the darker topics associated with Greek myth though, so content warnings in here for things like toxic relationships and domestic abuse, toxic parental relationships, and all of that kind of stuff, sexual assault as well. So do be wary of that going in, but like the relationship between Hades and Persephone itself is really like sweet and wholesome and full of like pining and all of that kind of beautiful stuff. Another sequel, actually the next 2 are sequels, let's just say it now. The first one is Foxglove by Adeline Grace. I recently read Belladonna and was very pleasantly surprised. Belladonna is a gothic fantasy romance following a girl whose entire family, or like close family, were murdered when she was a baby. Everyone died apart from her, and she is impervious to death. Death is a character within this series. Because of her being impervious, she actually encounters death many times throughout her life as she's passed from one awful guardian to another who all kind of like die suddenly. Now, the reason why these awful guardians are taking Signa in is because if she reaches the age of 20 in their care, they will receive a portion of her expansive estate. So after her last guardian dies, she's sent to her cousin's husband and she expects the absolute worst. But what she finds is a family that are grieving the loss of Signa's cousin, who died of an illness not too long ago, and their daughter is now dying of the same illness. So this family are actually kind to her, they treat her well, they look after her, and after communing with the spirit of her dead cousin, who reveals that maybe her death was not an illness and was something more nefarious, Signa vows to get to the bottom of her cousin's murder to try and save the daughter before the daughter dies. And then the last one for this stack is I Am Flame by Rebecca Yarros, which I've heard terrible things about. I haven't started it yet. I really did want to get to this before the end of the year, but it is just sadly not to be. My reading has really slowed down in December, and I'm also trying to clear my TBR that's been rolling over multiple months so that I can start 2024 with a clear slate, which unfortunately does mean putting off some of the things that I want to read for like the good of the future of my reading. But I Am Flame is the highly anticipated sequel to Fourth Wing, which is a fantasy romance following a girl who is forced to join the Riders Quadrant, which is a area of this war college where you train to be a dragon rider, but she actually has a chronic illness, so she doesn't think that she has the physical strength to see this through. And it's the kind of thing where like if you don't pass you die. The first book is set mainly with her experience in this college, but based on the end of Fourth Wing, I feel like the plot is going to thicken in this one. The people who've read it, some of the people who read it seem to disagree, but we'll see what I think when I do get to it. My book of the month picks for the 2 months that I worked with them in the last quarter of this year. We have 2 that I've read, which were the September ones, I think. Yeah. And then 2 that I haven't, which were the November picks. So my first September pick was You Again by Kate Goldbeck. This one is a romance. It's like a hate to love, but I don't feel like they ever truly hate each other. Following these 2 people who live in New York City who are very, very different. Our male main character, Josh, is very like somber and serious, and our female main character, Ari, very much like goes with the flow. So they come into contact with each other when Josh is dating Ari's roommate, who Ari is also like having a thing with. But Josh believes in like relationships and true love and romance, and Ari believes in like no strings, like friends with benefits kind of situations. So after this, those 2 kind of go their separate ways, and they meet up again after they've both been in a several year long relationship that has ended badly. So they kind of bond through their depression after their breakup, which eventually blossoms into a friendship. I really, really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. It was kind of like a mix of One Day by David Nichols in the like structure, like the setup of it, because it spans many years, and also like the love hypothesis with the character pairings. And I like, can we stop with the Raylo fanfic? Like there's just so much of it. I don't even know if this is for sure, because that's not something that I ever look into, but I want to say that it is. Is this like Adam Driver's not that hot, guys? I don't know what to say. I don't understand. My other September pick, I am going to be on Harlan. I did read it. I really, really enjoyed it. It's just not the kind of book that I would ever reread, and that is The Stranger Upstairs by Lisa M. Matlin. So this was the horror pick. It's like a thriller slash horror kind of situation, and one of the big themes throughout this book is that you don't know what the problem is as you're reading it. Like you don't know whether it's supernatural or man-made or what is going on here. But it is following a woman who is an influencer and a self-help therapist, and she is currently going through a failing marriage, which she doesn't want to admit because this undermines like that she has her shit together as this self-help therapist. So she buys this house, which is a murder house, with the idea of flipping it and like documenting it on her blog, and hopefully to bring her and her husband closer together in the process. But the longer they stay in the house, the more weird things start happening, and the more our narrator, who is already unreliable, becomes more and more unreliable throughout the course of this book. The November picks are the ones that I haven't read, the first of which is What the River Knows by Isabella Bañez. This one is a historical fantasy. I think it might be YA, but it is about a girl in, does it tell me the time period? The 19th century, and it's set in Buenos Aires, where our main character's parents die, and I think with like one of their advisors, she goes to Cairo to try and figure out like what happened to her parents. But there's also some like old world magic going on in here as well. I feel like I'm gonna really enjoy the atmosphere and the setting of this one. And my last book of the month book is another one of those like witchy rom-coms, which is This Spells Love by Kate Robb. I believe that this one is following a woman who is trying to, like, she does a spell to erase her ex from her life, and she wakes up in an alternate reality where her best friend doesn't know who she is anymore. And I think it's a friend's lover's story where she has to get her best friend to be her best friend again, to be, I think they sealed the spell with a kiss. So to go back to the actual reality, she has to get close enough to her best friend to kiss him to reverse the spell, and it's a friends to lovers story. The one Illumicrate special edition I picked up was Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I have discovered Ali Hazelwood this year, and I have read almost everything. The only thing that I haven't read at this point is Loath to Love You and Check and Mate. So this one is a YA romance, and it is following a girl whose life has been ruined by chess. I don't know why, but she has given up on the game because of that, and one day she spontaneously starts playing again, and she actually beats this guy who's like this massive chess champion, which causes him to take an interest in her, even though at the same time like they're rivals and he doesn't like her, but he does, you know? For the Fairy Loot special editions, I did order and I have read The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson, which is the sequel to Her Majesty's Royal Coven. That one is a contemporary fantasy that is set in Yorkshire, which, if you guys don't know, I live in Yorkshire. The thing that I really love about this as well is that the head of all of the witchcraft, like the hub, is in Manchester, which is where I'm from. Manchester's my favorite city in the world because of nostalgia, but like in the UK for sure. And in this series, we are following a group of women who have been friends since they were children. They were a coven when they were children, but there was this war between the witches and the warlocks. And after that, they've all kind of gone their separate ways. So one of them is the High Priestess of Her Majesty's Royal Coven. One of them uses her magic in her work as a vet. One of them has kind of put magic aside and has gone off to live a normal life where she's just got married and had kids. And one of them has gone on to set up a new coven in London. All of these women are thrown back together when a prophecy starts to be realized that says that when the sullied child is found, they will herald the arrival of a demon that will bring about the end of days. And Helena, who is the High Priestess of Her Majesty's Royal Coven, believes that she's found this sullied child, and she calls up her friend Neve and asks if Neve will rehabilitate them. I did also obviously pick up books 4 and 5 in the Fairy Loot editions of the Red Rising series. You'll know Red Rising is my favorite series of all time. Like books 1 to 3 in these editions are my most prized possessions. And yes, I did also pick up the Iron editions that they did. Similar with Samantha Shannon, do I feel like we should necessarily be remaking stuff when these are just as stunning? I actually think I prefer these ones to the Iron editions. It's just the Iron editions are gonna have like illustrated end papers and stuff, which Red Rising aren't, you know, like I'm never gonna say no. Because it's Red Rising, I have ordered them. In general, I do still prefer these ones, but Red Rising is a sci-fi series with an overarching dystopian plot, and also it reads like a military fantasy. But we are following a guy called Darrow, who is a red in a society that has a color caste system where reds are at the bottom and golds are at the top. After Darrow's wife makes herself a martyr to spur Darrow into action, Darrow goes to the surface of Mars, and like they've always believed that the reds are mining for this really valuable substance called helium-3 so that everybody can terraform the galaxy and all of the humans can escape the dying planet Earth. But when Darrow reaches the surface, he realizes that the planets have been terraformed for a very long time and his people are being kept in essentially slavery. So he then joins up with a rebellion to infiltrate the golds and then tear them apart from the inside. the drama, the Shakespearean tragedy of it all. I'm a big fan, guys, so I will have every special edition of Red Rising and I won't hear a word about it, you know? Like, I need them. I need them. Darrow is my boy. I would go to war for that man. And sometimes I have to when y'all are fighting me on whether Red Rising is elite. And then the last thing I have is another series from Fairy Loot. This is another like intuitive pick. This is a series that I feel like I'm gonna love. And I have a good track record with this, you know. I did it for Red Rising. I did it for the Greenbone Saga. I can trust most of the time my intuition in these things. And I'm terrified, to be honest, that one day it's gonna fall through and I'm gonna really think I'm gonna love a series that I end up hating. But this one is the Chronicles of Ixia, I think is the name of the series, by Maria V. Snyder. Maria V. Snyder is also actually going to be at Rare, and I forgot to include her in my TBR, and I don't know how, because literally if I read one author for Rare, I want it to be this author. But yeah, I forgot to include her. So these are gorgeous. I love these editions. But the thing that sold me, because I was unsure, having not read this series yet, whether I was going to invest in the special edition set, it was this. This is what sold me on this series. So this is a fantasy romance series. It's quite a popular one. I know a lot of people really love it. And it is following somebody who is about to be executed for a crime. And she is saved, but she has to be the food tester for like the king or the prince or something. So she starts to be trained in poisons so that she can recognize them. And I think that the love interest in this one is like a captain of the guard or something like that. I really want to get to this series in 2024, and I'm actually going to be filming my 2024 TBR after this. And I'm just going to leave these here to put them straight on because I definitely want to make that a priority before Rare. And as well as wanting to get through my backlist in 2024 and really make steps towards reducing some of my backlist a bit, I also want to stop putting off series that I think I'm going to love and instead prioritizing them, but then also reading the series and not just reading the first book and not ended up continuing for years. I do acknowledge that I say this a lot. Like I always say I need to work on my backlist, I need to work on sequels. The difference with next year is that I have actionable steps of like things that I can do to move towards these goals. So hopefully by the end of the year, instead of me looking at a mess like I am right now and thinking I once again started all these series and didn't finish them, I once again ended up with too many books because of the work I've put in throughout the year, will end up with the goal being at least within sight, you know? This is not the place. Essentially, I'm not doing a goals video this year. And because of that, like I'm just full of all of these thoughts about what I'm going to do next year that keep leaking into all of the other videos I'm making because I don't have a video to put them in. So enjoy, I guess. But I'm done. That was my final book haul of 2023. I hope you guys enjoyed. I feel like it was quite a rambly one. I normally get through this like pretty rapid fire, but I don't know what was on my shredders this morning, guys, but I'm feeling some kind of way. Maybe it's the festive spirit. I hope you guys are having, once again, a wonderful festive period. I hope you're about to have a wonderful Christmas or have had a wonderful Christmas, depending on when you watch this. Down in the comments, let me know which of these books you are most excited for me to read. Let me know if you've read either of these, what your thoughts are on them. But aside from that, guys, if you want to let me know you were here but you don't really have anything to say, just leave me a big old Christmas tree emoji down in the comments. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you'll find links to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish Candle website, the Etsy for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you're a go and nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.